Everybody, I have a question I'm going to answer today from someone who does frequent our videos, these videos quite a lot. And I'm just giving a second for people to come in. And you guys have requested that, a couple of you have requested now that once I turn on the live, that I give you just a couple of minutes or some time to get in here once you receive the notification. Now, other people who watch these videos, if it's recorded, you have to sit and listen through that. That's unfortunate. So yeah, if you're picking it up, if you're watching this later, you have to sit and listen for me to wait for people to come in, but there aren't any people coming in because you're on recording, right? But bear with me, just trying to accommodate people. I'm not going to wait too long. The subject today is around when physical pain or any pain becomes unbearable. What to do from an interior consciousness perspective, because there's always the doctor and medical treatment. But this person is asking this question for a particular reason, and I think you'll get it um, once I read it to you. Okay. All right, here we go, guys. Here's the question. Hi, Scott. I just left the hospital crying. There's huge pain in the lower part of my colon. Cannot even sleep for 2 days. It went into physical, but they don't know what's causing it. All the tests are negative. I've got some infection, bacteria 2 years ago, but none of the antibiotics or any medication works. It strongly affects my digestive system and brain, nervous system, and when I get stressed or anxious, the symptoms increase. This is why I'm struggling with nervous system regulation. I have tried everything the last year, normal medicine, Chinese medicine, a lot of modern stuff, but nothing works. They gave me steroids and some medicine for the pain and inflammation. Tomorrow I'll go to a surgeon. I'm losing hope. I feel I try and do everything. Tried some inquiry on that. Some shame came up, but nothing changed. Please share anything on YouTube about inquiring into this when pain makes life unbearable. I don't want to live like this. It's shitty. Thank you. Here's the thing I can't do on a video. I can't give like really explicit particular instructions. So I'm going to be meeting with this person this week, and so I'll have much more to say one-on-one than I could ever say live. Like, because one, I'm not a doctor. I can't uh, diagnose or treat. What I am limited to do is help you from an interior awareness perspective, how to skillfully look. But even that on video, I don't want to give anyone any sort of prescriptions. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to talk again about my own pain that made my life unbearable. And I'm going to explain again what I did for the benefit of this person and anyone else who's going through this. So I can't give you specific instructions or prescription if it's just over video like this. One-on-one is different. But I can share my experience, and if you listen closely, I'm giving you the answers. Okay, so I'm gonna keep my jacket on here. If you listen close, I'm giving you the answers, but I'm giving them to you by explaining my experience. Like, I'm not giving it to you as advice to you. When my pain became huge, like yours, the first thing that I did is obviously I went to the hospital too, and I was crying. It was how bad the pain was. And I did that for a while because obviously I wanted them to help me with the symptoms, just like you're doing. You want them to give you something that will reduce the symptoms. What I found out, you have to look for yourself, is that the particular conditions that I had were not curable from a medical standpoint. So there was no history in Western medicine of curing spinal stenosis, which is a narrowing of the spine, or bulge disc, or a bone spur that's protruding into a spinal cord. Those were all have been considered um, issues that are not curable. Okay, so I understood from the very beginning that I was only getting pain relief when I went to the doctor. Like they could only give me symptom relief. So to the extent that I'm looking to get to the root of something, for me, I learned that it wasn't Western medicine. You don't get to the root of things there, not at least with the conditions that I had. In no way should this discourage you from going to doctors because I have said, and I will continue to say, as I bring this work out into the world around chronic pain and illness, that you should continue to go to a good doctor even during the time that you're working with me. Take all reasonable medical steps so that none of that is interrupted. And the reason that I say that is because that's what I did. And I felt like it was a conscientious way to do this. So I continued to go to learn about what was going on with me from my doctor, and even sometimes to have tests taken, and in some cases, medical treatments. But you said something in your text to me or your message to me, which is that stress makes the symptoms worse. Okay, forget about healing for a moment. Once I knew, once the chronic pain was here, I already knew, because that's what we know growing up, that stress makes illness worse. So that's something that you already know. You don't even have to discover whether that part of it is emotional or physical stress. It's clearly psychological and emotional. So to the extent that stress is making it worse, one of the things you want to do, what I did, is deal with that stress. Now, what is this stress? Because as you open up that door of to what that door is pointing to, you can see that it actually leads to a whole bunch of stuff that could be connected to the pain, the condition, the painful area. But let's not get into that yet. First, just the simple definition of stress, like, or the way that we understand stress. Once you get a chronic pain or an illness, you really have to become skillful at managing stress. I mean, you don't have to, but you'll suffer because I did. So even living in an awake state, what was happening before the chronic pain is that certain stressors that I was encountering during the day would be to presence would be not a big deal. Like they're not the kind of things that you do inquiry on or that I ever did inquiry on. They're stressful things connected to my job or to my family, the everyday things. And these were not things, for example, that had me depressed or anxious or even thinking much about these things. They're just stressors in my life. Okay. And I understood then that one of the first things I had to do was to feel into the area that's painful and to start watching what's connected to it with regard to stressors around me. Now, we're not even talking about the past. I'm not talking about emotional repression here, really. And I'm not talking about trauma necessarily. What I'm talking about is, your mother or your coworker or your friend who calls, or something happens in your life where you don't have enough money to pay for a bill, or some sort of stress in one of the main areas. So work, career, family relationships, finances, which is also work and career, really. And then health, and yeah, just health, mental and physical health, areas in which we get stressed out because something's wrong with our health. Those are the main areas of stress. Let's just talk about that first, because for me, the very first thing that I needed to do was to understand or see the connection between my stress and the flaring up of the pain. To understand that that pain was being affected by stressful things that otherwise did not affect me. So hear what I'm saying here. If you miss this, you'll miss a big piece. These were stressors that were always there. They were always there. It's just that without the chronic pain, I couldn't even register them as stress. It would just be more like something is happening. Something challenging is happening, is how I would have said it. I would not have thought or felt stress from the situation, but apparently that area of the body was. So that area of the body for me where the location of the pain was one of the first things that happened is it became a stress detector. And this is where I started to recognize it's actually my friend. It's here to show me something. I didn't had no idea what it was about to show me in the next year and a half, 2 years, but it showed me everything. But I had to start listening first. I had to really stop looking. I mean, of course, taking action to go to the doctor, but I had to stop ultimately looking for the real answer outside of me. I had to start trusting this pain and just letting it be like a stress detector, almost like it's something like you can buy off Amazon. And just go with me here. It's like it's perfect because it works better than anything that they've developed. Your pain site is a stress detector. So it's literally telling you to stop and look at something. It doesn't say that. It doesn't say you need to inquire about the fact that you don't feel like you have enough money. It doesn't say that. What it does is when the money stressor happens, it'll increase and it's trying to get you, in a sense, to pay attention to something that's stressing you out that you're not really looking at. So that was one of the first things is understanding how valuable the pain was. Nothing happens in a vacuum. Everything is connected. This is something that we all see on the spiritual path. So this pain is not in a vacuum. It's not disconnected from your life. It is not in any way disconnected from financial issues or conflicted relationships or any of that. It's all very connected. So every time it starts to flare up, here's what I would do. Every time it would flare up, I would stop. I would feel into it and just allow it for a moment. And then I would pull up a panel of all the important people in my life. And so when you go to my whole life, there's only, there's a handful of people. There are two hands full of like 6, 8 people that are really important people in my consciousness, in my relationship. So mom, dad, brothers, sister, bullies, some coworkers, best friends, husbands, there they are. And also including current people. So during the time I was going through pain, I had to include our facilitator program, our community, because there were people just becoming certified and there were some issues in our community, some conflict going on. So those people had to become put up. Once you have those people in front of you and then you're feeling into your pain, you literally have a direct path, or I had a direct path to discovering what's stressing me out that I can't see. So feeling into it, I would just, with the panel of people up, which we call a panorama actually, I would just say, what or who is this about? And I would scan the panorama of people while feeling into the pain. And because you can trust your body will show you where to go first. It's even sometimes very nonverbal. It's just like energy flares up as you look at your boss. Okay. It could be a father, it could be anyone. But trust your body. And when you find the person that holds the most energy, let everybody else go away. Now do inquiry with this relationship, the stress of this relationship. So what I would do is, and I'm not, this is not a prescription for you, the one who's asking the question, because your content is going to be different. So the things that stress out your nervous system will be different than the things that were stressing out my nervous system. So I can't get too caught up here on content. I have to show you the structure, the way, the mechanics of it. So who or what is this about? And then I get somebody and I pull that person up. And then I'm asking a few questions to really illuminate what the story is that's being believed. So there's a number of ways of doing that. Excuse me. There are a number of ways of doing that. Um, One is the boomerang. So the boomerang is now you have the one person up, boomerang it back. What deficiency story? You already know there's stress in this relationship because you've done the panorama. Now you ask about what the stress is. This is about finding the content. What deficiency story is coming up with this person? Give a name to it. Yeah, just give it a name. I am not supported. It's going to be an I phrase. I'm not something or I am something. So now you have at least one way of naming your stress here. But the other way, and then from there you can go into inquiry. And I've been explaining how to do that. Hear me out for a second. This is why this will help. This is why this helped my pain. Because you see, I trusted my body, I trusted the painful area to tell me who to look at. And then I'm looking at that person, I'm trusting my body to tell me what the story is that's triggering me. So, for example, if I boomerang that back and I get the story, I'm unsupported, do I feel that in the painful area? If I do, then chances are that story is directly contributing to the stress. And in that moment, you don't need science right then. All the science is trying to do is tell you to look for stress. But now you've found it. You have a tool to find directly what it is. And it's the story that you're unsupported. Now, that's one way to get at it. From there, I would do reverse inquiry. So sitting with that person in view, in awareness, the image of the person, feeling into the painful area, I would just reverse. So I'm fully supported. And then I would sit with each thing that came up because these thoughts that come up to object to that are stressful thoughts. And you can actually feel them connected to the area because this is how you got here. You trusted your body to tell you who to look at. When you have the who, you trusted your body to find the content of your stress. So there you found it. So as you see these thoughts coming up, observing and allowing and loving each one and letting each one fall away, resting in the presence that remains because the falling away of these stressful thoughts changes the stress connected to the area. So you stay with it. There are other ways to get at the stress because sometimes you want to look at it not from, or I would look at it not just from the angle of of what story is showing up, but more importantly, sometimes what I'm believing about that person. Those are stressful thoughts. So if I would have the thought that my coworker is irresponsible and creates a lot of extra work for me, stress. So I can ask, instead of what does this mirror back about me, this relationship, I can say, what am I believing about this person or this relationship? This person is irresponsible. Now you want to test that out. Nothing happens in a vacuum. If there's stress, you're going to feel it with that thought coming up. She's irresponsible. You're literally going to feel it flare up in that area. You've got to trust that completely. You've got to start trusting your body now. It's telling you everything that you need to know about what you to look at. And this, by the way, this applies to people with body contractions. Like literally, if you have a stomach that's contracted, exactly the same thing. So believing that she's not responsible stresses the system out. So might reverse that. She's totally responsible. So that I can see, no, she's not. Are these other thoughts? And you can literally feel the stress connected to it. So it's like you know you're on the right path because you can trust your experience. And you observe each one of those thoughts one at a time if you can, letting each one fall away and to become the awareness so that the energy can shift in watching each one of those. These are all stressful thoughts that you couldn't see, but they were operating somehow in your system. So whenever these stressful thoughts and feelings are operating in our system, but we're not aware of them, they're wreaking havoc. They're stressing out areas that are already vulnerable. See that? So being very thorough with this, understanding that not only do you have all the important people in your life that you want to come back to do inquiry wherever your body's getting stressed out, looking at someone, in order to take care of yourself, you got to go all the way through that. If you just go through one person and you feel slightly better, but then there's another person or two more areas out here that are unconscious. You can expect the pain. This is what I learned, is I could expect the pain to stay around or even get worse if I wasn't open to looking at these things. And I tested that out. I tested it out. Like there were days when I only had time to do one series of inquiries on a particular person or something, and I would spend the rest of the day in pain simply because I had sessions to do one after the other, and I couldn't get to my own inquiry. So I'm sitting in sessions, just stressed out pain. But then again, because I tested it out, at the end of the sessions, on certain days, I would come back to inquiry on the other stressors and clean it all up, the unconsciousness, and it would be a great pain reliever for that day. So what I learned is that very skillful deconstructive inquiry just on daily stressors is not only good for regulating the system, the nervous system, which is often affected by chronic pain and illness. Um, so I understood that I was in some process of healing, for example, because I was seeing that this wasn't as physical as I thought. So I kept seeing that early on, but I was testing it out in terms of whether it this particular way of looking actually reduces pain on a given day. I understood and saw the falling away of it happening, but I needed to understand more about whether inquiry is the answer in a moment of pain and just for that moment. And that became really for me the only sane answer to all this because everything else for me became obvious that it was a cover up job or a distraction. So, cover up job meaning the medications, the treatments, the movements, all this stuff would just kind of cover it up or temporarily do something, but it wouldn't get to the stress that I was believing. So it was like covering all that up. This would uncover it all. And so, I have to say, like, chronic pain and illness, on one hand, it's awful what we go through. And on the other hand, it's a gift because it's trying to get us, in a sense, to finally look at what we're believing on a daily basis and how that's stressing us out. So, first of all, just get really good at that. Remembering there's a panorama of people, but also that there are like three or four categories of stressors. And again, they have to do with love, relationship, your relationships, work, finance, career, um, health. So look for those areas as you scan those people because chances are when you find stress with a person, it generally falls into one of those categories. Now, that's just for pain relief. And that's all that I would often do it for in a given day because that's all that mattered to me on a given day is just the relief of pain. So once I learned that the medications and the treatments can temporarily help, so I would integrate those while I was doing inquiry. I would continue to go to the doctor, but I got very diligent and earnest around detecting the relationships currently in my life that are creating stress and getting clear of all that stress on a regular basis. So this was really good just for my overall mental health. Like the clarity was great for that, but mostly it was about relieving pain. In addition to the maintenance that we do this work, or I did this work in order to function each day. But there's a deeper thing that was happening for me, which was the falling away of that condition. What I could say healing, but I just call it a dissolution. Like something is just over time dissolving. Now, that was happening too, which was great because all that I was really doing was meeting in awareness on a daily basis, whatever would come up through the inquiries. And so I get the pain relief each day. But as I stood back, I started to see there's a pattern happening because when the pain over time, as I got very skillful, the pain would come back, but it wouldn't come back in the same intensity. So the trajectory started to look like a falling away of it, very slow, but a falling away. And that started to happen not just from looking at the daily stressors, because sometimes the daily stressors are just about that. It's just like what's stressing you out today, and it doesn't necessarily tie in deeply to the past. It wasn't until I opened my awareness up to areas in the past that had not been resolved. When I did that, is when I started to notice the dissolution over time, the deeper work. So for that, I've said on YouTube so many things about that. But the things you're going to want to be aware of again are unresolved trauma, emotional repression, shame, deficiency stories. So there's your categories of things that you're likely to encounter as you go deeper into inquiry. Here's how I went deeper into inquiry. First of all, I understood from reading science and Dr. John Sarno that a lot of pain, even illness, in fact, is at least partially caused by emotional repression and unresolved trauma. So at this point, for people not to be aware of that, you would literally have to be burying your head in the sand for you not to recognize what science has been doing in the last 10 years that we really ought to be paying attention to, which is science is bringing us the studies that show us that what we have not resolved in our system, especially that which remains unconscious still, is contributing to these. That's science. That's not me. I've already posted all those studies. What I'm saying is I did not bury my head in the sand once I understood that. To bury your head in the sand would be to go back like before that science came out and believe the stuff that the people believed then, which is that all of these conditions are purely physical, are mainly physical, and they're just made worse by stress. That was the prevailing view. That view, as I can see, is changing. So one of the things we have to do when we have an illness or chronic pain is we have to take a look for ourselves, I think, to discover what is making this happen. There's all kinds of tests that you can do, and I've done them on here before, but it's worth mentioning again that if you have a painful area that's arising, you would want to look into the degree in which it's holding there's emotional repression there. So I asked to the person asking me, have you done the test on that area? Be one of knowing what I know now, it's one of the first things I would do if a new area of pain arose. The first thing I want to know is all the science correct? Let me find out. So if I feel into that area now, and I'm looking at the issue of emotional repression, I've got to run through some inquiries that will show it to me. Is there something in my system that has been repressing one or more emotions or traumas or something? Because if that's the case, then there's repression. And science says the repression contributes and sometimes causes these illnesses and these chronic pains. So you want to do the test, right? Because otherwise it's just abstract information. It's just some scientists over here doing some studies and it feels very academic and it's like that's divorced from our experience when we don't go into experience. Go into experience. Forget the scientific knowledge now and actually discover whether there are emotions or things being repressed and are you feeling that in that area? And if you are, there's emotional repression work that needs to be done in that area. There's no way that I can see around that. I had to do that work. Here's the test. I know I've done it before, but people forget it. Feel into the vulnerable area. Pull up your panel of people all the way back to mom and dad and begin asking a series of questions and writing down the answer. So the first question is anger repression. So as you feel into that area and look at the people, simply say, I can feel and express anger directly to all of them. As soon as you say that, if you feel a flare up, so here's the thing, I didn't feel anything in the spine just then. That's telling because for months and months and months, I would get some response to my questions like that. And when I used to say I can feel and express anger, that literally the thing would just flare up, tighten up, and contract. And then if I listened to my mind, I would hear the mind say, no, you cannot express it. So then I went in that inquiry. But for now, you're going to want to mark off, just put on a piece of paper, is there anger repression? Yes, because you just discovered it. That you don't feel comfortable expressing anger. You've had to hold it back and either not feel it or not express it. Science tells us that that contributes to these illnesses. So you would definitely want to write that down and come back to that. To skip that and to go over it is to further keep the repression in place. It's going to keep it in place. And then you almost have to expect to suffer if you keep that in place. Because if it's contributing to it, by ignoring it, it's like inviting more suffering. So you run through the other emotions then, feeling into that same area, looking at all the people. I can feel and show fear to all of them. No, write that off, write that down. No, can't. So there's fear, repression needs to be dealt with. Go through the other emotions. I can feel and show happiness, joy. I can feel and show love and affection. I can feel and show sadness or despair, grief. I can feel and show shame. Write down each one where you get a no to that and don't ignore it. That's what I did. And is once I saw that there was a no, that I couldn't, and that it was like everything came together. Of course, I'm in pain. Of course, science is telling me that I'm probably going to be in pain if I'm repressing anger and all these other things. And lo and behold, I'm in pain. It's just simple equation, verifying in your own experience what science is saying. So now you have this list of emotional repression work. The thing is you want to get busy on that each day because your repression is happening every day. It's been happening since you were young. So this mechanism continues every day. If you just write out on a piece of paper that there's anger repression, but you don't go into that, the pattern continues, and therefore the pain can continue. See, what I did each day was I simply managed the pain by working on the stressors. And also if I sometimes needed to take something. So I wasn't afraid to take a medication because I had this inquiry work. I mean, I was actually afraid to take medication in the beginning because I had some recovery, old model views that say no matter how you're hurting, you don't take painkillers. That was just some old idea in my head. So yeah, I was afraid, but once I got over that, I was able to medicate my system as needed. I didn't have a problem with that after that because I was getting to the root of things. So it wouldn't sit too well with me if all I was doing back then was just medicating the system, but not getting to the root. But but I felt comfortable taking care of myself in different ways because I was getting to the root and I needed time. In the meantime, while I'm working with this, I may need some pain relief, and that was fine. But then I would stay in inquiry because each day, working on the stressors, the pain would get less, and I could see the trajectory, the falling away of the thing. So once you're in this rabbit hole and you're starting to see that your pain or your illness is at least a lot of it or part of it is emotional or psychological, you're in that rabbit hole of looking. You have to continue. I've had to continue it because if you don't continue it, you go back to the old ways of thinking. The old ways are like treating it as a physical thing only, ignoring unconscious suffering, not resolving trauma, continuing to repress emotion and other things. That's the old way. And that old way is what brought about in me, contributed to, in a big way, the enormous pain that I was in. At this point in the game, it became about skill. It is a lot of it is about skill, frankly, because you can listen to a talk like this and get the basic principles, and then you can go in and not find, not even discover the things, the trauma, the shame, literally not be able to bring it up in any skillful way. So when I started to do inquiry, I was using the Killaby inquiries, but I hadn't yet developed them in a skillful way to meet this part of our experience, the repression and the trauma, like to really meet it and discover it as it connects to deep pockets of pain. Like, so through being in pain, I learned how to sharpen each of our tools in the Killaby inquiries and direct them towards the issues. So it became about skill. You may not want to hear that, but I have to say it. It is about skill. And I'll tell you this, after I worked with myself and the healing happened, I started working with other people. And I can tell you it is totally about skill on one level because there's lots of practices out there that people are doing that are not conducive to healing, but they don't know it. The same kinds of practices that I was doing until I wised up around it. And one of the practices that gets people stuck is the continuously coming down into the body and monitoring, almost like in a fixated way, an area of pain. So that that thing in our brain that makes us constantly monitor pain, that thing will often bring us down to feel the pain directly and then therefore miss the unconscious thoughts. This is one of the most troubling things about this, guys. Hear me out for a second. There's a pain signal, and so your attention wants to come down to the area of pain, right? But when you're down feeling into the area of pain, all you feel is pain. You may see some thoughts, but mostly you feel the pain. And then, therefore, all these unconscious thoughts around repressing emotion and trauma and deep seated survival deficiency stories, like I'll talk about that in a second, um, they're hiding. So, the way that our system is designed to hide it from us. That makes sense because it's repression. So, that's one thing you have to get over is this habit. And then some of the spiritual practices actually reinforce the habit. So they'll say, come down and feel the painful area and just rest with it, which is what we're really doing anyway. We may not be resting with it, but we're constantly coming down when we're fixated. And then in coming down, you're focused on the sensation, can't see all the network of thoughts that keeps it there. So that's a major practice problem for people that I have to help them with. Like many times, the sessions that I do in the beginning with people is correcting that, just showing them like that's not working. And if you don't believe it's not working, just continue to do it for a while because I kept doing it and just realized my pain got worse. So I had to do something different there. And what I'm showing you is the different thing. Ironically, this pain, this condition left me without much in the beginning, at least looking or feeling into the pain. I would simply feel it in order to find the unconscious network of thoughts, the repression thoughts, the trauma thoughts. And then I just stayed witnessing those unconscious thoughts. And that's where the dissolution happened, just like that. But people's practices, the ones that they're bringing to me, are almost like designed for healing not to happen. And the big part of it is that they keep coming down to feel something and missing this unconscious network of thoughts. Killaby Inquiries is already designed to help you not do that. The method is already designed to do that. I've said this so many times. I don't know if you guys get tired of me saying this because I feel like I'm repeating it a lot. But for example, with the emotional repression, if you discover there's anger repression there, you want to be skillful in order to make that story conscious. There's literally a story or a program in your mind that says you don't want to feel or express anger. Being skillful is about bringing that thought stream up. It's not about coming back down to the pain over and over. because the emotional repression is hidden. You're not going to discover much there unless you're really lucky. And then in some act of grace, just by feeling it, the thing dissolves. But I would say 95% of the time or more, that doesn't happen. So coming down in and feeling into it, working on anger repression, staying with that because that's contributing to it. So learning how to do that skillfully, right? And it's a matter of just reverse inquiry, like looking at someone, I can feel and express anger, listening for that thought, no, staying with that. But people say to me things like, well, I've been doing that. Okay, and what? You've been doing that. But listen to what I'm saying. You have to keep doing that because this is a mechanism, a habit of repressing anger. It's not like the habits don't take a day off. They don't decide that on Sundays and Mondays we're not going to be repressing anger. There's a constant mechanism of repression. So you have to stay in inquiry to keep this story alive in awareness, seeing it, bring it back up over and over until there's nothing there. Until when you say, I want to feel, I can feel and express anger. Yeah, I can. So if you've done some repression work, this is what the ego does. Listen to it. It's saying, I've done some of this. That's enough. I'm still in pain. I give up. Right? That's the repression talking. That's the mechanism of avoidance talking. Once you've discovered a story that you have to repress anger or fear or whatever else, just remember that story is operating. Whether you're inquiring into it or not, it's operating in your relationships, creating more stress. So, what would be the wisdom in saying, I've been doing some of it, I should be done? There's no wisdom in that. Because as long as the repression mechanism is operating, if it's connected to the pain is going to outlive your inquiry. The repression is going to continue. I don't know any other way out than through. And I've never, in the course of being a teacher, have understood that phrase more than I do now. I understand it completely. There's literally no way out than through, because if you're trying to get out of it without going through it, it means you're avoiding, bypassing, repressing, suppressing. So now it's just not just a nice spiritual phrase. It's literally, it is the way, it is the only way with regard to this deep somatic stuff is through all the things that you're believing that you picked up from the past that are now manifesting as an illness or chronic pain. So here's another gift in the midst of of all this pain is that when we develop these illnesses and this chronic pain, because we are then at DEFCON 4, you could say, like we're in very dire circumstances, then we're pulled into inquiry more. If you pay attention, you're pulled into the discovery of truth even more because it's a matter of almost like survival. So there's a gift in this when the pain gets great enough, is that it pulled me into inquiry every day. And then here's another hidden gem. Not only does the readiness increase when we're diagnosed with these things, if we're open, the readiness can increase, the skill level can increase because we have to learn how to access this stuff. So there's a gift in the pain in that it gives you better skills, it gives you higher level of readiness. And if you do this work, it's actually the greatest gift is that these areas are actually showing you. They're literally popping up in our experience to show us everything that we have not wanted to look at. So it's like we go through our whole life, and then later on in life, we get this chronic pain, and the chronic pain is just there to tell us everything that's stressing us out on a daily basis. Not only that, it's telling us everything about the past that hasn't been integrated and embodied. And in that way, it is perfect. It's painful. It's painful. I've been there, but it's perfect because it's coming up to say, look, you can bypass all you want on your spiritual path. You've done that. Congratulations. Now you can't do it anymore. That's what the pain is essentially saying. Now it is time to clean up the stuff. And it's almost like saying, if you don't do that, you will suffer more. It's that good of a friend. Now, I don't want to say that in a way that feels insensitive, but what better friend could you imagine having than a friend that comes into your life and says, "Look, I know you've been on this spiritual path and you've had lots of great experiences. There are a bunch of things that you have missed. A bunch of things, no judgment. If the pain shows up, it's not like it's trying to judge you. It's simply a friend. It's saying, I'm a friend. I'm here to tell you that you can't do that anymore. You can't avoid these areas. If you avoid these areas, I'll be here. I'll be here and I'm going to be making you feel more pain until you look at this." That's exactly how it felt for me. That in the end, the pain was a blessing because it helped me, and my conditions were a blessing because they helped me clean up what had not been cleaned up before that. So the hidden gem is that these conditions become a doorway to a greater freedom, a greater sense of love and compassion, and a more translucent body. Like it's all pointing us to that if we listen. The unfortunate thing about what I've been doing in the world with this is that I would love to be able just to support people more. So when I was going through my chronic pain, luckily, being Scott Killaby, I had all the tools and I just could refine them and then I could support myself. And then if I needed support, I could reach out to Dan, my co-developer, and he would. So I had all this support and all these skills. And then I look at other people that may not have that. They may not have the people around them that know how to facilitate them or how to help them with these issues. And they may not have the skill. So, you know, what I'm trying to find out is how do we bring this work to people? And one thing I'm doing is, in addition to working with people one on one, I'm also encouraging people to train with me because in the training there's more support. Um, and in the training, you get supported by other trainees. It's like a community of people. So there's the support that can be offered. If people can't do that, I do my best to kind of come into their life once a week on Saturdays in a weekly group meeting to give them more. But ultimately, I think that we have to each of us build a network of people in a certain way, whether we become certified in this work or we just do peer support with people who are doing this work. Find those people, find those people and start those kinds of relationships where they're in the know about this. Like they know that you're working with your trauma. They even better that they know how to facilitate you. Support is so important. There's only so much that I can do in a call or a video like this. There's only so much I can do meeting with you once a week. So what I'm trying to do is one of the reasons why I do all these videos is so that you'll have all this context. It's all free. And then get the tools from the Kio video series. Go to killaby.com, drop down menu, courses, KIO. That video series contains all the skills. Once you have that, you've got me giving videos here on a daily basis. You have all the context you need. Now you just need the support. Whatever it is, build that support. Find those people and continue working with this. See if there's anything else to answer there. Let me talk a little bit about trauma because it isn't just about it wasn't just about repression. Um, this to me, this next thing is a great and one of the great discoveries of our work is trauma commands. We've been working with trauma for a long time, but during the course of the chronic pain, what I discovered is these sensations that are painful in our bodies, if they're connected to trauma, they start to become like the doorway to hearing the tantrums of that inner child. And I don't want to say tantrums in a derogatory way, but what I could call them commands. You have to be really tuned in and listening to the body and kind of asking the right questions. But at a certain point in your inquiry, you'll find out that like this sensation is like that inner child screaming that it wants to protect you, that it wants to keep you safe. It has its own set of programs, you could say. So what I learned is that there are certain commands that show up that are connected with these painful sensations. It could be something like stop, don't, get off of me, I can't, um, get away, leave me alone. It could be a number of other things. In addition to the stories, the identities that get hooked up in trauma, there are these commands. If you think about it, in the moment in which we're traumatized as a kid, we may not have the voice to say these things like, get off of me, don't, stop. And yet, the energy of that command is there, trying to protect us in that moment. So, that energy and those words, those commands, those programs get stored away and they get held. And it can be held there for many, many years. But then now that it's manifesting as this pain. And again, you can get really fooled into thinking that's something physical until you start to listen to what it has to say. So one thing I discovered, for example, is one thing that says I can't trust people. Again, from being bullied, I can't trust people. So you've got that, something like that coming up, like a deficiency story or a phrase. But within that, the command in the sentence is I can't. That's like what I mean by a trauma command. It's like a persistent phrase, even like a couple of words or one word that are really strongly velcroed to that sensation. So the question is, how can you discover those? You want to first discover what you're believing connected to that, right? So you first find the trauma. So what or who is this about? I'm just going to talk about my own experience. Creating an art project in fourth grade was where the bullying first started. When I asked who or what is this about to the pain, at one point I got a picture of this art project that I've shared on video before. On this art project, we were painting this box, and the paint from the top started to drip down one side. So it was like this perfectly painted box and then a big drip over here. So I just started letting the paint drip all around it. And so it was basically a box with drips everywhere. And I was ferociously bullied for that. Um, they were calling it the drip mobile, making fun of me, chasing me over it, laughing. And all that happened. And I didn't understand or even know the particular commands and phrases that were really pertinent to that. But having the memory of that art project, I could ask, okay, but what does that mean about me? And something would come out like, you're not going to make it in this world. With these kinds of people out here, you're not going to make it. So that's an example of like a sentence that feels relevant to the pain and to the memory of trauma. You're not going to make it. So I would work with that, and I found out that these phrases that feel very strongly attached to these images are also strongly attached to the pain. So I would bring that inquiry up. I'm going to make it in the world. No, you're not. You have to hide. They're going to attack you. You see, so I would do the normal inquiry to clean up that unconscious network of thoughts. But then as that got cleaner, I started listening for what are the words within that even that feel more like a command or like a tantrum. Um, and then I'd say, can't make it, just can't make it. And then that phrase felt, that itself felt like it was more connected than any of the rest of the sentence. So I just bring that up, can't make it, can't. And then I started noticing it's really the word can't. So I'm just witnessing all of this until I get down to like that one word that feels like that child screaming, trying to protect me, saying, I can't, I can't. So I could, at that point, I recognized that the I can't was almost synonymous with the sensation. It's like every time I heard the I can't, I felt that flare up. And so what I did is I would feel into the contraction, but I would just look at the words, I can't. So a lot of people, they're making the mistake of feeling into the contraction, but not seeing the words or the thought. So they're blind to the mind body connection here. So they'll feel into something and then they wonder why it doesn't go away because you're not seeing the command there, which is so vital to the thing. The command is everything. Seeing that, I can't, letting it fall away. I can't. And even sometimes when it was there, just saying, are those words the awareness that's looking? Because the identification was so close at that trauma level. And just asking, are these words I can't? Is that the awareness that's looking? Be like, no, this is the awareness that's looking. The word is just there. The words that would help it fall away. So I did that with all commands. There was one point where it was like, get out or get away. That command was brought through in that way, repetitiously, relentlessly, repetitiously, until there was nothing left of the word. I can see why contraction and chronic pain work has gotten missed in non duality because you don't hear that very often to witness something repeatedly. Because in non duality and meditation, you're told to just be with what is. So, what could happen is that this phrase, I can't, might come up and you're with that phrase, and then that falls away, and then you move on. Because to stay with that would sort of be like to break the rules of meditation. Well, in some meditation, some pointing say, just be with what is. So when the I can't falls away, that's no longer what is. Go with something else. Big miss right there. Big miss. I would have continued to be in pain, I'm sure, if I'd have missed that. So we have to break the rules a little bit here. We're not just being with what is. Excuse me, guys. I apologize for that. Turn that off. So instead of just being with something once and assuming that once it falls away, you're done, bring it back. Say, I can, or something opposite of the command to let it come back up and be with it relentlessly, repetitiously. That's what I did. That made all the difference right there. Because even now, as I come back, there's literally nothing there that I can feel in my spine, next to nothing. But as I feel into it and I say, with regard to I can't make it in the world, I can. There's nothing. But for quite a while, there was a, I can't, I can't, I can't, I can't. That had to be seen repetitiously for that to be unhooked. And that made all the difference right there. Here's another reason why I think we haven't been totally skillful in this whole thing is even when we get more skillful and we're feeling into areas, what we'll do is we'll just look at a variety of a bunch of stuff coming up from it. So, you'll say, so what does this mean about me? This sensation. And then you get something here. And then you ask again, you get something there, get something here, get something there. And you're not staying on any particular theme. So you're just being again with what arises. But what arises is like several different things. But there might be one particular arising that has a lot more on it. For example, the anger repression. So again, if I say I can feel and express anger and I get a no because he'll attack me, and then I rest with that, that falls away. I might not even think to repeat that, but instead I might ask again, okay, so what else does this mean about me? And then something else comes up, which may be relevant to it. But what it does then is it takes your attention off a really relevant line, which is the repression. So I wanted to redirect back to the anger repression, the other repression on a periodic basis, coming back to that and back to that. because that's the repression. And almost everything in my system wanted to turn away from the repression inquiries or even from trauma. See, so you have to come back to it because there's a turning away that happens. So the be with what is does not work on this level. Of course, you're going to be with whatever arises, rest with it. That's true. But in resting here, just assuming that everything is going to arise that you need to see, it's not. It's not. You have to ask these questions and then you have to stay with certain, I did stay with certain strands that come up and follow through with that. Because as long as I believed that I can't, then I was going to be in pain. It's that simple. When I no longer believe I can't, the pain seriously reduced. As long as I believe that I have to repress anger, I'm going to have pain. There's no way around that. So I have to go down that and stay down that path. There you go. Let's see what questions popped up or comments. Yeah, there's quite a few things here. Oh, how do you get to the repressed thoughts when observing the pain? Great question. I did explain that, but I'll explain it again. Once you know that there's anger repression, feel into the vulnerable area where the pain is. Pull up the person with whom you have to repress anger, whoever you found in that panel. Dad, for example. Feeling into the pain. Just say this: I can feel and express anger. So you're not going to be able to pull up the anger thoughts and feelings if there's a repression first. So the repressed thoughts that you're pulling up first are the ones that say you don't want to feel that. So when you say, I can feel and express anger, no, because of this or whatever, that's the first one to bring up because that's when that one's saying that you're not going to feel this. No matter how many times you come down, you're not going to because it's not safe. You have to protect yourself, all that. You want to stay and uncover, discover this thought stream that says no and keep that in awareness. Keep seeing that no and allowing it fully each time, space between each thought. And then after, you have to do that for a while. It's a lifelong habit. But in doing it for a while, you'll start to eventually feel more anger. It may not be the first sitting, it may not be the first week or the first several weeks, but once you stay with that thought, eventually the thought stream, just like any of them, begins to dissolve and lose its strength. And when it does, there's nothing there saying repress anger anymore. So then it comes up, or fear comes up, or something comes up. And then when that comes up, you can look at the thoughts that come with it. So again, once the repression is taken care of, or there's anger that's no longer repressed, now you're angry. Now you're afraid. Now you're sad. The repression is lifted. Go into inquiry about what you're angry about, what you're sad about. There are still programs on that level once the repression is lifted. Once the repression is lifted, it's like what Eckhart Tolle is saying. Whatever you can do with regard to a trigger, watching a thought, feeling a feeling, inquiring, good old Eckhart, once you're out of repression, any of the non-dual pointers or inquiries can help there. So again, once the feeling is up, you can start asking, what am I angry about? Or I'm not angry at anyone. Yes, you are. Dad, witness. Because now you have the feeling up. But if you can't get that feeling, if you can't get access to a feeling, how are you going to access the thoughts connected to it? You have to be able to access the feeling. That's the repression work. You have to stay in the repression inquiries for a while. Daily is what I did. I keep saying you, but I'm just talking about my experience. Let's see if there's any other questions. Okay. think I've answered everything on that, on that's been asked here. Just say a couple more things here. Um, at this point in time, not only is there no pain signal in my spine, but the sensation that was left over, the seemingly physical sensation, has dissolved, unraveled, loosened up, complete change in my body. So I feel confident in what I'm saying here. Very, very confident. Not in an ego way, just confident based on my experience that I feel like I can navigate this with people now. If I was still in enormous pain, it wouldn't be the case. The other thing I want to say for anybody who's still listening is I'm trying to form a partnership with people, doctors, researchers, nurses, that we can bring this work to people. Because people, as this person said, she was crying in the hospital. That's where people go. They go to the hospital, they go to the doctor for these physical issues, which is great. But as we discover that there is a spiritual, emotional, psychological element to it, sometimes a very big element, going to the doctor, you can't get that help. So I want to form a partnership with people so that when people go to the hospital, to the doctor, this dimension of their consciousness is included. The interior awareness, the traumas, the repression, the stress, that isn't there. So I'm reaching out to anybody here who knows of any doctors or nurses who might be interested in this or researchers. Put me in contact with them so that when you go to the hospital in the future or your kids, this dimension will be available to you at some point or to humans in the future. So if anybody's interested in that, killibycenter@gmail.com. That's how to reach me. Just want to say I have a lot of compassion and sensitivity towards the person who asked this question today. Um, just a lot of compassion for anyone going through, which I've gone through, like cancer and chronic spine conditions. They challenge us in the biggest ways. They challenge everything about our system. They're challenging us to go deeper at the same time. And at the same time, while we're being challenged to go deeper, we're in incredible pain or awful symptoms. So it's not something to make light of at all. It's very serious. So my heart goes out to you and to anyone else who's suffering. All that I'll say to you is open, open. Don't close down around this work. If you close down around this work, you could be inviting more suffering. You don't have to do this work, but find something that gets to these issues. If you close down around what I'm saying, you could be inviting more suffering here.